Hey guys, this is Rick at Tasty Guitar. Today I'm going to share with you a little bit about my experience playing on cruise ships for about 15 years. The highlights, the lowlights, the types of gigs that are available to guitarists on ships, how to get the gig, how to keep the gig if you want to be able to do it long term, and even some links in the description below to some agents that can help you do that. So if you've ever considered playing on a ship as a guitarist, or maybe you're just curious about what the life is like, you're going to want to check this out. So I took my first cruise ship gig now back in 1997. So that's coming up on about 21 years ago now. So in that time, I think I estimate I played between 30 and 35 contracts, ranging in duration from 3 weeks on up to about 5 months, but averaging probably about 2.5, 3 months a contract. So I think I can say with confidence that I kind of know the gig, what it's about. And a lot of people think it's something that is, a dream come true, but every gig has its pros and cons, and I'm going to lay that out for you right now. So the obvious pro to doing a cruise ship gig is the travel. The travel opportunities are amazing, and it's really what makes the gig. I think I've been able to travel to 50, maybe even 60 countries on all corners of the globe on these ship gigs. It's the real thing that makes it worthwhile. Another advantage to playing on cruise ships is the possibility of saving money. You really have no expenses on board because your room and board is paid for, but you got to remember that you're traveling to some exotic, beautiful places, so there's plenty of opportunity to spend all that cash in port. And what you didn't spend in port, you got to remember that the beers in the crew bar are $1 or $1.50, and that can add up quickly. But if you're smart about it, you can save 50, 60, even 70% of your salary every month. Another pro to doing the gig, and I think that this, for me at least, was the most important thing, was you are playing your instrument all the time. I mean, 6, 7 nights of the week for months on end, you will be playing your instrument. And it's a huge opportunity to grow as a musician and become a better player. Job security is not something we really talk about when we're speaking about career in music. But cruise ship contracts do offer usually 4 to 6 month contracts with the possibility to extend. And if you're good at what you do, you can really do them indefinitely. And now, it sounds too good to be true, right? Right. Here are the cons. Now, for me, the worst thing about playing on a ship was always the accommodation. The accommodations suck for crew on a ship. Go ahead and take a look in your bedroom at your walk-in closet. Get a good look, because that is about the same size as a crew cabin for musicians on a ship. And depending on the gig, most gigs you will actually end up sharing that room with another person, and it even could be a stranger if you're doing a show band gig. So accommodation is the worst con of playing on a ship. Another huge disadvantage to playing on cruise ships is the schedule. Now, these cruise ships don't take a day off. They just keep going around and around. And the musicians that work on them don't have days off either. Generally, 7 days a week is the norm. Now, occasionally, you will get a cruise director who will work a day off for the musicians in the schedule, 1 day off a week. But it's not the norm, so you can count on playing 7 days a week for months on end. Another obvious drawback to playing on ships is the time spent away from your friends and family back home. Now, like I said, these contracts are generally 4 to 6 months for musicians, and not everybody can deal with that. So before taking a contract on a ship, you need to make sure that your head is in the right place, or you won't be able to get through it. Another thing worth mentioning is you will have responsibilities besides playing music in some situations. Stuff like safety drills and training and in-port manning. That means you stay on the ship even though the ship is in port. These things can be kind of a drag, especially if you're used to playing land gigs where you don't have to deal with any of that stuff. So kind of a nuisance, but it's just part of the gig. All right, guys, I'm now going to talk to you about the kind of gigs that are available to you as a guitarist on a cruise ship. There are 5 gigs. I've done 4 of them. So the first gig I'm going to talk about is playing in a band. So we're talking about like a party band or a lounge band, generally a 4 to a 7-piece band. Now, one of the advantages is, of course, you come on with your friends, you come on with a band as a unit, you know everybody, you all get along, everything's great. But then 2 weeks in, 3 weeks in, somebody gets homesick, somebody just cannot handle the restrictions or living in a tiny space, and they gotta go, and you're stuck out there in the middle of nowhere without a replacement. It happens a lot. And a lot of bands, especially doing their first contract, never make it to the end. The next gig I'll talk about is being the guitar, vocalist, soloist on board. Now this gig has some pretty good advantages to it. The pay is generally better than what the bands make. You get your own cabin, which is like gold on a cruise ship. You can sell your CD if you have one to make a little extra cash. And you're the only one that you have to deal with. You don't have to worry about, coming in as a band and somebody quitting halfway through the contract or getting fired. It's just you, and you're only responsible for yourself, which is kind of nice. But a big disadvantage here is it's grueling. I mean, singing 7 nights a week, 4 sets a night for months on end is really a grueling gig, and you really have to take care of yourself if you're going to make it all the way through. Another situation you can find work as a guitarist on a cruise ship is in a guitarist-vocalist duo group. This is a good option if you don't sing, but you have a partner that is a strong singer. Now, in a duo, you need to be really, really versatile, but the gig does pay a little bit more than the bands, but not as much playing solo. Now, the con to playing in a duo is because you will a lot of times be the most versatile act on the ship. You can play easy listening, you can play dance music. They will put you everywhere, and you could end up working up to 3 different venues in one day. That can be a real drag with moving your gear around. This next gig on ships is something kind of new to the industry. Now before, the orchestra musicians were generally a bass, drums, piano, and a horn section. But in the last 10 years or so, they started to add a guitar to incorporate more pop music and stuff like that. Now the advantages to doing the guitar orchestra gig are no singing. You don't have to be a singer to do it. And it's a challenging musical environment. So if you want to challenge yourself, if you want to improve and grow as a musician, I think it's a really good gig to take. The cons of the gig are it's probably the least paid gig on the ship, which is kind of a drag because you got to be able to read really well. And musicians in the orchestra come and go all the time because they're not brought on as a cohesive group. You got players that'll be signing off and coming and going all the time, which means that you can be an experienced player and the next week some drummer came on direct out of school and can't play shit. So that is a constant source of frustration for orchestra musicians. The last gig I'll talk about is the creme de la creme gig on a ship, and it's really almost impossible to get unless you really luck into it or have some serious talent. And that is playing with a guest entertainer as part of an act. Now, the guest entertainers will generally do a headline show once or twice a week. That basically means you got a 2-day work week, which is pretty awesome. You got a nice room all to yourself and a lot of other perks that kind of go with it. I was fortunate enough to have that gig for about 5 years of my time on ships, playing with kind of a diva R&B jazz singer. It was pretty awesome. That's the gig to have if you can get it. Okay, so now you know a little bit about the gig. Now, how do you get the gig? Well, there are some criteria and some hoops that everybody has to jump through. First of all, you need a good promo video. That's like a high definition video, usually no more than 5 minutes of length, of little clips in different styles of you playing, either for the solo gig or with your band. That is something everybody has to have. A good photo, also necessary. A song list with at least 200-300 tunes is necessary, unless you're playing the show band or orchestra gig. You need to pass a physical and drug test. That is a prerequisite for any kind of ship gig. Also, passport and be ready to travel. So if you want to return and do it long term, the playing part of the gig is really only half of it. You need to be punctual, you need to be well dressed, you need to be professional. You basically got to behave yourself. I mean, that is a large part of working on a cruise ship. And if you don't, it doesn't matter how good a musician you are, you won't be asked back.